Welcome everyone. I would like to greet the audience, and I just would like to say in advance that we are very thankful at the Department of Ethology that we have followers who are interested in our work. And this research, what I would like to talk here, is about a very well-known and often investigated phenomenon regarding the relationship of dogs and humans. This is the dog-owner attachment bond. And I think that when we talk about dogs, dog behavior, dog-human interactions, one of the favorite questions what we can get from our audience is whether we found the effect of breed. Because of course everybody knows that there are tremendous amount of dog breeds, and many of us have the clear impression that there is a strong difference between the typical behavioral patterns of dog breeds. So it is quite logical to suspect that, as in many other issues and many other situations, probably dog breeds will show different attachment bonds with their owners. So these very cute pictures here just show two very different dog breeds, a retriever and a sled dog. And we know that these dog breeds were selected for very different purposes, very different work functions, and they are related to the wolf-like ancestor to different levels. We regard sled dogs as so-called basal or ancient dog breeds, which are kind of wolf-like, if we want to say this. Meanwhile, retrievers are much younger dog breeds, and they were selected for so-called gun dog purposes, but of course nowadays most of them from both breeds are living in family conditions as pets, as companion dogs, but we know that they can show very different personalities, temperament, and in general they are kind of different dogs. So our main question is whether we will find differences between the attachment bond of various dog breeds and their human companion, the owner. Let me start with just in general talking about dogs in the human environment. As we know, there are an enormous amount of dogs living with us on this planet. According to some publications, we can estimate that the world's dog population is about 1 billion strong worldwide. And what is very important is that although most of these dogs are not the traditional owned dogs what we have here around in the industrialized countries, but most of this 1 billion strong dog population lives as village dogs, pariah dogs. They have many names, basically without owners, but within the framework of human society. But what is, just because of this, true for the bigger part of the dog population of the world, they are not independent of humans. Whether they are owned dogs, whether they are village dogs or pariah dogs, they live within the framework of the human society, and we can say that they mostly or fully dependent on human resources. What is also a well-known truth that dogs in general are attracted to humans. So although these, for example, not owned dogs, the street dogs, the village dogs, theoretically could leave the human settlements, they don't. They don't live out in the forest, they don't live independently as hunters, they live at the human settlements, and they are attracted basically to humans. And I don't think so that I would need to convince my audience to believe that the dogs what we keep as family companions, they are attracted to us too. And also, what is a basic knowledge, that dogs are very easy to socialize. It is so easy that basically we don't even know how long, or rather I would say how short is that period what a dog puppy should spend with a human to be socialized. It is a very short time what is enough to socialize a dog puppy, and it is a very wide sensitive period, so basically up till 10-12 weeks of age, till if the dog meets with a human, basically it gets socialized. But is this attraction to humans, and is the fact that dogs get socialized very easily, is enough to create a cooperative companionship between dogs and humans? Because we know that, for example, compared to cats, we cooperate with our dog companions, or we can say that they cooperate with us. What do I mean here? That we are most of the time engaged in some sort of joint activity with our dogs. Our dogs follow us whenever we give them a task or not. So when we are come and go at home, they are there where we are, they are paying attention to us. And obviously I do not need to prove here that we can very easily convince dogs to do something what we want them to do. This is the basic of working dog. Compared to this, cats are also attracted to humans. They are easy to socialize, but again, I do not need to talk, I think, too much about that, how difficult it is to convince a cat to do what we want from it to do. So, our next important point here, that the relationship between dogs and humans is an asymmetrical relationship. In other words, dogs are dependent on us. So there is an individualized, exclusive social bond with a particular person on whom the dog will show dependent behavior. This relationship is very similar, we could say that functionally the same as a little infant's relationship with her or his caregiver, most likely one of the parents. So, when this dependency between a toddler and the parent is having an obvious adaptive value, we can say that in case of the dog, it is also very adaptive of being dependent on humans, or more correctly, being dependent on one particular human, whom we call here the owner. And this asymmetrical dependency-based relationship between the dog and the owner is called the attachment, or the attachment bond. So, what exactly is this famous attachment bond? This is already a complex phenomenon. As you can see here, there are three main factors what we can describe dog-human attachment. One is particularly called attachment itself. This means that the owner serves both as safe haven and a secure base for the dog when there is a mildly stressful situation. Safe haven means that the dog, when it gets scared or anxious or afraid of something, it goes back to the owner and calms down. The secure base is something different. When the dog has the owner present, it is much more confident to explore an unknown situation or unknown place. So basically, when I am scared, I go back to the safe haven. When I feel confident, I leave the secure base and explore the environment. So this is basically what the attachment factor covers. The next factor is anxiety. The anxiety is the reaction of the dog to a moderately stressful environment or something novel stimulus. Obviously, this will make the dog a little bit stressed. And the third factor is the so-called acceptance. What does it mean? If there is a stranger, so an unknown person for the dog in this environment, which level the dog will show friendly behavior, accepting behavior to the stranger, or will the stranger even be as having a calming effect as the owner does? So obviously, when there is a low acceptance level in the dog, then only the owner exists for it. When it has a high acceptance level, then the stranger is almost as good as the owner. How to test dog-human attachment bond? It is the famous strange situation test, which was adapted from child psychology to the ethology of dogs. The strange situation test is, as the name of it suggests, puts the dog into a mildly stressful situation, which is an unknown place, and also the inclusion of an unknown person, the stranger. And with the help of the strange situation test, we can elicit the three factors of the attachment bond. So we can test the level and the intensity, how much the dog is attached to the owner, how anxious the dog becomes in this stressful situation, and to which level the dog accepts the presence of a stranger. Of course, attachment as an important feature of the dogs has a wide interest in ethology. For example, there are many studies which were looking at what could be the origin of the attachment. And this comparative research compared the behavior of well-socialized wolves, which were absolutely tame with their handler, to normal family dogs. And what the researchers found, that although these socialized wolves are truly attracted to their handler and they are very friendly with other people, and they get mildly stressed when they are left alone or put into a strange location, but they don't show so specific owner or handler directed behavior than dogs do. So although affection and attraction exists in case of the socialized wolves towards their handlers, it is not exactly the same as the very owner-specific dependency of an attached dog. And the other way to compare dogs' attachment to something else, it can be done when we test cats in a strange situation test. Because we could say that cats are also companion animals for whom being attracted and being dependent on humans would be very adaptive. These results show that truly cats can be very affective with humans. They can show preference for their owners. But there are no clear-cut results that cats would have such a dependency-based attachment bond to their humans, to their owners, than dogs do. So, in general, we are now at the point where we can say that dogs are the only known domesticated species which form attachment bonds with humans. But what is with the potential differences between dogs? Are, for example, dog breeds showing the same sort of attachment with their human companions, with their owners? Because we know from many studies and also from practical knowledge that dog breeds are differing from each other by their behavior. Some of these differences are very obvious, so I call obvious differences, which belong to the function-dependent behavioral pattern collection of a dog breed. So, for example, it's not by surprise that gun dogs are used for retrieving fallen prey, or sled dogs are used for pulling sleds, or herding dogs are used for herding. There are breed-specific or function-specific behavioral patterns which are more or less present in various dog breeds. And there are also very interesting discoveries by etological research which show sometimes indirect, so non-function-based or not directly function-based differences between dog breeds, for example, in their communicative abilities. So how much a dog, for example, paying attention to human visual cues, it can show big differences between various dog breeds. Or there are recent researches which show that the playful behavior of various dog breeds can be very different. So, how can we probably give a better clustering for dog breeds? Because we don't think so that just directly comparing, let's say, Cavalier King Charles Spaniel to a German wire-haired pointer would be a very good comparison, because why we picked these two breeds? Is there some more logical clustering of dog breeds? And there is a very often used way of clustering them. This is the so-called cooperative and independent working dog comparison. This is a very useful one, by your opinion, because this is based on not specific breeds, but a functional work-related selective past of these dog breeds. The so-called cooperative working dogs are the ones, for example, like the retrievers or the herding dogs, in general the gun dogs, which were selected for such a work task where they are in a constant, usually visual connection with their handlers. Compared to them, the independent working dogs are the ones, for example, like greyhounds, terriers, sled dogs, which were selected to do such work purposes, working tasks, where they do not need to be, or they cannot be, in a constant cooperative exchange of information with their humans. So imagine a terrier or a dachshund, when it goes under the dirt into the burrow of a fox or a badger, it cannot have the direction information from the human. Once the dog is under the ground, it's on its own to find and fight the prey. So, what is good in this clustering? We can suspect that a cooperative and the independent working dog will have different level of need to interact or in general to be with humans. So, for example, in our earlier research, when we compared the separation-related behavioral signs of dogs, we found an interesting difference between cooperative and independent working dogs. Cooperative breeds showed a more intense reaction to be separated from their owner. So, in other words, they tolerated less separation from the owner than the independent working dogs. So, based on this, now we had the question whether the independent and the cooperative working dogs would show different patterns of dog-human attachment. So, in this study, we had two hypotheses. Hypothesis 1 says that the functional selection, what we were talking about here, which resulted in cooperative or independent working dogs, may have affected also these dogs' need or capacity to form attachment bond with their owner. The second hypothesis, contrary to the first, says that the capacity to form attachment bond is something much more older, a much more ancient feature in any dog than the later coming functional breed selection. So based on these two hypotheses, we can formulate predictions. Hypothesis 1 results in a prediction that when we test them in the strange situation test, the cooperative breeds will show stronger attachment, which is the specific reaction to the owner, higher anxiety when they are in the stressful situation, and potentially a lower acceptance towards the stranger than the independent breeds. But if we take in consideration the second hypothesis, then we can predict that there will be no difference between the cooperative and the independent working dogs, because as the capacity for forming attachment with the owner is an older phenomenon in dogs than the upcoming breed selections, then every dog will be the same capable to form attachment bond with the human. In this test, we had basically the equal amount of cooperative working dogs, 28 as you can see. These were coming from various gun dog breeds, herding dog breeds and so on. And we had almost 30 independent working dog breeds, which are various hounds and terriers and so on. The test itself consisted of a warm-up phase when the dogs were introduced shortly to the testing room with their owner present, and also we gave them a mildly stressful stimulation. We played back dog growls to enhance a little bit the level of stress in this unknown place for the dog. And then came the 6 phases long strange situation test. As you can see here is the room, just on a little illustration. There were 2 doors. One door was exclusively used by the owner. The other door was used exclusively by the stranger. So the stranger and the owner had their own doors to come in and leave the room. There were 2 tables with little wooden cubes on it, because there was a task both for the owner and the stranger to carry cubes from one table to the other, not like a playful activity, but just to see whether the dogs are following spontaneously this activity. There were 2 chairs, one for the stranger, other for the owner. There were toys to play with the dog, and this in the corner is the speaker where the previously mentioned dog growl was played back. The 6 episodes I will not talk about in detail because it will be too long, and I don't think so that it is necessary. So basically the 6 phases of this strange situation test consists of such events when either the owner is in, or the stranger is in, or both are present, or both are absent. And this is a fixed order for the 6 episodes. Obviously, when the owner or the stranger are in, they can be engaged in playful interaction with the dog, or they can, as the protocol says, carry these cubes left and right. The main thing is that these 6 phases represent an incrementally growing level of stress for the dog, because it starts with the owner is present, then the owner leaves, the stranger comes in, then everybody is out, so the dog is left alone, and then finally the owner returns. And what we can watch in this testing setup is what is the dog's reaction individually to the owners present, the strangers present, how much they are engaged in activity with these people, and how much they react when these people leave, and what is their reaction when these persons come back. So, in other words, we can connect various behaviors to the 3 factors of the attachment complex. So, as you see, the attachment to the owner factor is characterized is how much the dog spends, how much time the dog spends near to the owner, how much it follows the owner, how much it ignores the stranger, and so on and so on. The anxiety factor is characterized by various stress behaviors. So, for example, either restlessness or apathy, vocalizing, trying to leave the room by opening or scratching the door, And the acceptance factor, for example, can be characterized by the behaviors which are directed at the stranger, or even seeking contact with the stranger, or greeting the stranger when he or she enters the room. So finally, here is a little summary for these behavioral patterns. Dogs can get scores. Here are the maximum score number for the each factor. Obviously, the higher was the score, the more prevalent was for the given dog, the given particular factor of the attachment complex. And let's see the results. So as I told, just for remembering, we either expected cooperative dogs showing stronger attachment, higher anxiety, lower acceptance, or we expected, according to the other hypothesis, that there will be no difference between cooperative and independent working dogs. So, the first result what I want to show you here on this graph is the contact with the owner. And very interestingly, you can see that there is a nice difference between independent and cooperative dogs, because what you can see is that independent dogs contacted much less the owner than the cooperative dogs. So it starts to look good. I mean, it looks like hypothesis 1 will gain some support, because cooperative dogs seem to be more owner-centered. Our next result also falls into this pattern. It's the playing with the stranger. What did we find? That the cooperative dogs were much more playful with the stranger than the independent dogs. So among the cooperative dogs, there were much more individuals who played with the stranger, so they seem to be more social in this situation, the cooperative dogs, than the independent dogs. And our next slide is probably the most exciting. This is the attachment complex and its association with the independent or cooperative dogs. Independent dogs are the pink, the cooperative dogs are the brown. Now please pay attention, because I am cheating here. These are the hypothetical results. So what we would expect if hypothesis 1 would be true. If hypothesis 1 would be true, then we would see that the cooperative dogs score high on the anxiety, score low on the acceptance, and score high on the attachment. Meanwhile, the independent dogs are just the opposite. They are less attached, less anxious, and more accepting. This would be the hypothetical result. However, in reality, this nice mixed cloud of dots what we got. In this graph, every dot means one dog. And what you can see, that there is absolutely no effect of the work selection style of the dog breeds. So, in reality, what regards the attachment complex, there is no difference between independent and cooperative working dogs. So, as a summary, we showed that our results are much more fitting to the second hypothesis, which predicted that there will be no difference between independent and cooperative working dogs, because most probably the selection to be able to form attachment bond with the owner is a much older thing along dog domestication than their subsequent selection to various working styles. So obviously there are differences between the behavior of independent and cooperative working dogs, but these differences are not connected to their attachment with their owner. Furthermore, this also means that if somebody says that, oh, I so much more like the retrievers or the pointers or the herding dogs because they are so affectionate, and I don't like the independent working dogs so much because they are a little bit shy, or they are a little bit cold and they are not so affectionate. This all might be true. These opinions can be all valid, but this doesn't mean that these dogs, either the cooperative or the independent working dogs, would form different attachment bond with us. Because being attached to the owner is equally adaptive for any dog. And basically, the closing thought is that the dogs are truly not cats, or the cats are truly not dogs, because both can be very affectionate with humans. But the specific dependency-based bond between owner and animal is very adaptive and very useful for the dog, for all dogs. Meanwhile, the cats remained truly independent from us, and they do not need, for them being attached to the owner is not such a question of adaptation than it was for the dog. At the end, we would like to say once more thank you for following our research and being interested in what we are doing here at the Department of Ethology in Budapest. And of course, I do it in the name of my lovely co-authors, Rita Lenkei, Marta Gácsi, and Cecilia Carreiro. We did this together, and please visit us anytime on the internet, or look for the next Family Dog Project conference, hopefully in next January. Thank you.